I get up early, fairly early. I get up between 4:30 and 5, and I'll have, feed my cat, have coffee and what have you, and I begin work maybe 6:30 or 7 o'clock, and I write 6 pages a day. I used to write 10. Now I've cut back, and I write 6 pages a day every day, 5 days a week actually, and that's my day. My work, that writing part of my day is over. Now I divide my day, my writing into three very distinct operations. The pre-writing, which is research and getting ready to write and creating characters, for example, the writing, and then the and rewriting. So I'll do my writing first. Then for the rest of the day, which might be from 10 o'clock on, I'll do, maybe I'll do some research or reading, or maybe I'll do outlines for something else. But my basic day is with the writing 4 hours. I think the tendency of younger people is to work from an intellectual passion. And the tendency of the old timers is to work more from craft. And so what Christopher does, he challenges me to reestablish and refine that passion within myself, to go after to take the chance. And so that's very, very interesting. Working with him. When I'm going to work with him, I will go further out. I will take more chances than when I'm not working with him. So he's sort of revived me. I love working with him. I get tons of letters from young readers. Many of them relate to the characters and say, well, I have a similar problem, a similar circumstance. They think they relate because the characters are like them, but really I think they're relating because of the environment. They recognize the environment. They're drawn to the books because they hear language they are familiar with, they hear names, they hear circumstances, and these are familiar things, so the book becomes a friendly place to be. And they write to me, and they say that, oh, we love your books, and et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, I'm just like this person. I'm just like that person. This person reminds me of my cousin, which makes me feel good. I've always liked music, and again, when you talk about a cultural substance of a community, like Harlem, music has to play a big role. If you go to Harlem or any of the Harlems in this country, out, you hear music. You hear music from the Caribbean. You hear music from the South. You hear music from everywhere, and that becomes like there's a rhythm to the community, which is just so rich and so good that it has to be included in any serious book, I believe. Reading has changed in my lifetime. When I was a child, my father could not read, but he was strong. My father was a little bull of a man, and he could make a living doing that. When I was young, you could work in a factory, and perhaps with poor reading skills, but you could still find employment. Today, you can't do that. Today, reading is like air. You have to be able to read to find a job. And you have to read more and more in your day-to-day life. There are more instances in which you have control over some aspect of your life. Beside the books being about African Americans, they are about urban issues. And you'll find that when you go through books for young people, you don't find that many books which take place in cities. It's a very strange thing. You find books that take place in suburbia over and over again, but you find very few books that take place in cities. And even in the on television, you find city living only on cop shows. You know, everything else it's only within the apartment. But the idea that, you know, other fences, other brick buildings, other fire hydrants, in my books there are. So many kids are attracted to that urban experience. I think that sometimes people don't understand the differences in the lives of children from the inner city. That perhaps that child hasn't had breakfast that morning, and perhaps that child doesn't have a quiet place to do their homework, and perhaps that child doesn't have someone waiting for them at home, but yet the child is not going to say to a teacher, well, you know, I'm hungry, or I have no one at home, and so the child puts on an act of bravado. The child says something to the effect of, I don't care. This is something you hear all the time from children. I don't care, and of course they care. They all care. But they have to put on this sort of defensive, this defensive act that, you know, I'm a tough guy. I'm tough. You know, I don't care. I'm removed from this. This is for somebody else. Because if they don't see a way out, they can't say at 12, 13, or 14, I give up. When I was very young, my mom, who could not read very well, she read on probably a third grade level, would read with me in the afternoons. And just the proximity of being with her and sharing that time with her was such a pleasant thing for me. And I just love that. I just love that. Also, I believe that she talked with me all the time. I could talk with her forever. And she would listen and would ask me questions and what have you. And that gave me the idea of imagining scenes, and, you know, she would say to me, what should we go see today? And I would say, let's go see there was a milk bottling plant on 125th Street. We'd go see that, you know, or we go over to the markets. And books were just an extension of that, or an extension of the conversations. Except I'm having these conversations with someone who's very efficient in their conversation and telling me their stories. And it was just something that I loved. Also, I was also handicapped to an extent that I spent 10 and a half years, 11 years in speech therapy. I couldn't speak very well for most of my childhood life. People could not understand me, so I just went through years and years of speech therapy. So when I wasn't playing ball or fighting someone, which I love to do, playing ball and fighting, I would be home with my books. My books were my friends.
The Meet the Author series is a production of WETA. Major funding for Reading Rockets comes from the United States Department of Education, Office of Special Education Programs. For more author interviews, recommended reading lists, and information about teaching kids to read, please visit us online at www.readingrockets.org.